It has happened in Vegas. The Cup's going to stay in Vegas. And for the first time, the Golden Knights are Stanley Cup champions.
Hi, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Bread Loves Hockey podcast. I'm Brendan Bread O'Connell, from the title. And before I introduce my first guest, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and why I think that you should be listening to our podcast today. First off, you're probably one of my friends, so it would be kind of rude if you didn't listen. At least a couple episodes, maybe one. You don't have to even listen to it all in one sitting. I appreciate you being here. If you don't know me personally, I appreciate you being here extra because I don't know how you found me, but thanks a lot. I didn't grow up playing hockey or even really watching any of the games, but I've gotten into it over the last 6 or 7 years, and it's just completely, changed my life. I'm super into it now, and I didn't even really think about getting into hockey at all until I went to college at a D1 men's and women's hockey school, so that was really what sparked me to do that, along with where I met my first guest here today, his classmate of mine, and a huge reason why I've gotten into the sport. Dean DeFilippo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, I'm honored to be your first guest on your first episode.
Yeah,
and I'm excited to talk some hockey.
I'm excited too. I really wanted to have you on as my first guest because I kind of feel like you were like totally the inspiration for me going to the games and watching the sport on TV. I didn't even think, I was like, well, maybe I will go to some of the in-person, men's hockey games and that'll kind of be it. And then I started following the sport more, started watching Bruins games. Dean, you're obviously a Bruins fan. That's why I'm repping the Bees today. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go on. I hope anybody listening or watching was not expecting, a big name person as my guest. I don't have any connections with anyone in the professional hockey world, but I love chatting about the sport, and pretty much anybody who I meet who says that they root for a team, I'm like, okay, we got a little 5-minute conversation that's about to happen here. So, yeah, Dean, you want to talk a little bit about, our first encounter and how we got to be very good friends?
Sure. Yeah, I like to take credit for getting you, Justin, and Owen into hockey, even though I don't know how true it is for everyone. But as you said, it seems like for you, I was a part of it, which is good to know. Um, but yeah, it's funny. Part of the reason I actually heard about Clarkson was my dad had heard of the college because he follows hockey and knew them from being like a hockey school.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Oh, I think they're an engineering school. You should check them out." And that's
Mm-hmm.
the only reason I'd ever heard of Clarkson was through hockey. So if my dad wasn't a hockey fan, I probably would have ended up at like WPI, which was the other school I was looking at.
It's pretty funny how that works. Like, somebody will just say, "Oh, I've heard of that school. It's a good hockey school." I knew a lot of people who knew it as an engineering school, but they said the hockey's great, and I was like, when I was looking into schools, I was like, I don't really know if that's gonna be a huge draw for me because I wasn't into the sport at all, in high school, but completely, it definitely is a big draw for a lot of people, and I'm glad I stuck with it.
Yeah, and part of it too is it's the only Division 1 sport at the college, right? So if
Yeah.
you want to have any sporting event to go to, even if you're like looking for like an excuse to drink as like a college student, it's going to be at like a Clarkson hockey game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a completely different atmosphere. I don't even know if I really ever attended any of the other sporting events there, because you know it was the mecca. The men's games and the women's games were really fun too. They didn't draw nearly as many fans, unfortunately, which it stinks because like there's the skill is so much different between the two leagues because you don't have the body checking in women's, but they were still fun, and they definitely drew crowds compared to like the soccer, the football teams. The basketball teams were like playing in this really tiny arena, and it's like not conducive for viewing, but they go all out for the hockey.
Yeah, and I feel like the pep band was a big part of it. I mean, obviously we're biased as both being Clarkson alumni, but I mean, you read articles too where like players hate playing in Shield just because of how loud the pep band is. And I mean, some of my favorite games were being in like the fan section, like right, like front row by the pep band, and being
Oh
able to
yeah,
watch right behind the goalie.
yeah. Oh man, that it is an experience to have the pep band right there. I love I we knew all the songs that they would play, and we'd start getting into those. I love just rocking out with them, and
The
it,
chants.
the chants were great. Yeah, you start when you're a freshman, you're like, what are they saying? You're like trying to look around and see other people like talking, like what is that? What is that? And then you start hearing them, and you start picking them up. You're like, okay, that's funny. I'm definitely gonna do that every single time now. Like yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely build it into a bit of a community where it's like you're always gonna go to every home game. You're gonna make such an effort to be there, and be as rambunctious and raucous as you possibly can.
Yeah, I mean you have like all the classic chants, like every game, just like saying "Slew socks" or whatever, and then I just like the witty ones for each, almost like every team. There was, especially the divisional teams, you had
Yeah,
your chants for those, like playing Colgate, like "Crest is best" and
yeah,
things
it's
like
like
that.
and it's such like a college thing too, because it's like it's so silly and stupid, but it really brings everybody together, and it's just fun. It's funny, and it wasn't super clever, some of them, but like
Oh,
brown
another
is
one
the
of my
color of
favorites is
poop,
for
and
Brown, the
yeah.
POOP. That spells IV.
Yeah, yeah, that one is pretty good. Oh man, I'll definitely have to get back up there and go to a game, because I've been wanting to do that for a little while, since graduation.
Mm. Do you have a favorite chill moment during your college days?
I was thinking about that. Um, and probably, as we're talking about the pep band, it's funny because a lot of the time when I was playing, I would get really into the music, and I would be like, drumming on my knees and stuff. Like I just love the drums, and so I was like, basically playing the banjo on my lap, and one of the pep band guys who like must have known that we come most of the games, and he noticed me messing around, and he came over. He had a set of bongos that they were using, and he just like they weren't really playing music at the time, but he brought them over. He says, "Here, do like a solo," and I was like, and I just started wailing on it for like 30 seconds or something, and then I finished, and everyone was like, "Yeah!" I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like somebody actually noticed, and it was so fun. I was like, I never would have expected anything like that, and it was cool to get more involved that way as a fan. I'm sure you've
Yeah,
had some
I
good
remember that.
ones.
I'm pretty sure I was like sitting right next to you.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was like, no freaking way. Do you guys see that? Like I didn't even believe it. I was like, no, he's not looking at me.
For me, I have a couple, but I don't know if you were. I think you were there. We were like right behind the glass, behind the net, and I think it was. I don't know if it was Nico Sturm or Sam Vino had a penalty shot, and
Oh
they
yeah,
scored,
that
and we
was
were just right
awesome.
behind the glass, and like the energy in the arena for that was amazing.
Yeah, like, especially with how rare the penalty shot is. In college, it
Hmm.
seems like they almost never call that, and you don't get the shootouts, or at least at the time that we were going there, they didn't have the shootouts, so you really didn't get to see those one-on-one like breakaways like that. So to have that was like super cool, and yeah, as soon as the puck goes in, we're right there. You see the whole thing. You're pressed up again. You're like, yeah, oh my god.
Yeah.
You're going as ape wild as you can. Nothing beats that, unless it's in overtime. Then I
Mhm.
guess, yeah, that's even better. But um,
Yeah, I love those moments, like sitting on the glass, like sometimes you get that like intimate moment where like a player celebrates and like looks through the glass like at you, and you're
yeah,
like, "You're my guy."
yeah, you yeah. Unless you're getting really good seats at NHL games, you don't really get that same experience. And even then, I feel like they don't do that as much where they're like singling out fans. Although sometimes they do. Like I think it was Brandon Tanev during the Avalanche Kraken series this year. He scored a goal, or he assisted on a goal or something, and he was like staring right at one of the Avalanche fans, doing a nice like stare down and stuff. And so that stuff
It's like
is
the
fun.
stuff you see in like weird NHL.
Yeah, yeah, I love those.
I mean, that's part of the draw of like Mullet Arena for like Arizona this year, right? They're like, oh, we're in a small arena. Like you can see like Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid like up close.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you
there's something to that for sure.
there is, and I I would like to go there, but it's like, you know, it's so far away, and I've already been to Arizona too, because we went to the game there at Gila River Arena the last year actually, for that arena before they got kicked out, which was, you know, it was not one of the better arenas that I've been to.
They
I'll
still
say
had
that.
CRT TVs.
Yeah, they had the CRTs hanging up. We're like, okay, yeah, they could use some renovations here, at least as far as a pro hockey arena goes. I'm sure they can hold other events there, no problem. But yeah, we're like,
So how many arenas have you been to now?
I think it's 11 or 12. I want to say I went to two new ones this year. I'm trying to go to all 32 teams' home arenas, and I think it's 12 because I went to Montreal and New York Rangers, Madison Square Garden. So I hadn't been to either of those, and then I went to a Devils game, but that was actually my third time there, which is the most I've been to any arenas before. They are pretty close, and we usually get good deals through my work to go there for cheap tickets. So that was pretty cool. And the last time I went there, me and Justin got to go on the ice after the game and take a group photo, which was pretty cool. So I'd never been on the ice before. Definitely a different view. You get to see the underside of the jumbotron. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, that's not an angle you get to see. Yeah, you do feel different out there.
Do you have any specific ones next on your list, or just whatever comes up?
Yeah, I was thinking about that for which ones I should try to cross off. I was thinking, like, because there really isn't much that's close to me anymore. You know, the closest one is probably Toronto, which is like a solid 6-hour drive or something like that. Plus you gotta cross over the border, which isn't too bad, but you know, it's just one extra step. So I'd probably either do like a Toronto-Detroit trip, or maybe I would do something where I take a train down to DC, catch a game there, because like you're not that close to Raleigh to make it like a double trip. I guess you could, but that's yeah, this is where it starts to get tough, because where I'm based, like I've gotten all of these ones like in the area, so now it's like you got Dallas is like, you're not getting anywhere else but Dallas when you go down there, or like I guess Chicago you might be able to do with St. Louis or something, but yeah, it's getting tougher and tougher to get to each one.
Yeah, and I feel like the solo trips almost feel a little wasteful. Like you want to try to like
Yeah,
do a trip and like knock out 2 or 3 when you go. But
right.
I mean, you're young. You got 20 more arenas to do. Like you have plenty of time.
Yeah, like it's not like I need to do it in like 3 or 4 years or something. Like, you know, I don't have that kind of money to spend on going to that many arenas so quickly. Like, because I have to do flights. You know, it's not like I'm gonna drive to Vancouver or Winnipeg or California. It's like it's not gonna be feasible.
And you spent all that money on jerseys. I mean, just look behind you.
Yeah, that is a significant portion. Got about 70, 75. So
you're at 75-ish?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you have one from each team, but like, so where is the other like 40 from? You have how many James Neal jerseys?
I got 6. All the teams. So Dallas, Pittsburgh, Nashville, Vegas, and then he went to Calgary, Edmonton, and then St. Louis, I believe, was the last one. So 7. Yeah.
And that was what started your collection, right?
Yeah, well, my first jersey was a James Neal. I bought it because I haven't actually said this on the podcast yet, but I am a Vegas fan. I'm a Vegas Golden Knights fan, so that's my team I chose. We can get into that a little bit later, but yeah, so I liked James Neal. I don't really know why. I liked him in Nashville. I saw him a little bit before I started. Like that was right when I was getting into hockey. Was the end of the 15-16 season, I guess. So, or 16-17 actually. So I was getting into it, and then I was like, yeah, I'll get my first jersey. I'll get a James Neal, and it was a Fanatics. I paid full price. It was like 200 something bucks with the customization, and I didn't know anything about jerseys at the time, so I didn't know like that was really not a good deal at all. Like I've seen so many like Adidas Neal jerseys nowadays where it's like, oh yeah, I could buy that now for like 50 bucks or something, and the quality is like way different. But you live and you learn. So I did that, and then I saw somebody was selling a couple, like 2 different Neal jerseys. They were selling a Predators and a Flames. I was like, okay, well, if I get both of these, then maybe I could get one for every team that he's played on. And so I ended up buying both of those, and here we are.
And then you just decide to get one of every team. You're like, I already got 7 or 6 teams.
Yeah, actually, I decided to, well, I finished my 32 out of 32 collection before I got my last James Neal one, because I had to get 2 of them customized with his name and number. I got a blank Dallas jersey and got that one customized, and then I had a Blues jersey which I got customized because like they weren't really selling, our pre-made James Neal jersey. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't even play the full season for them. He was obviously not anything offensively like he was, 5-6 years ago. So, and then I was sort of hoping the following season that he would end up signing. He signed a PTO with Columbus, and he went to training camp, but they did not end up extending him a contract. So that was pretty much where it went for him. And I don't think he's officially announced retirement, but he's done. I mean, he's not gonna be, serviceable anymore. So I think I pretty much got them all, unless something really crazy happens.
And you got a James Neal retweet out of it.
That's true. I did tweet it, and he did see it. I tagged him, obviously. He never would have seen it if I didn't tag him, but I did tag him, and he retweeted it, which he very rarely tweets anything at all. So I was like, hey, that's pretty special.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah,
Big deal, James Neal.
the real deal.
Real
He's
deal.
the steal. Yeah. Oh, so that was pretty cool. And I'm sure, I don't know, I'm probably like one of the only people who has the full collection, I'd imagine. It's not like he was like a very super popular, player. It's not like he was like a generational talent or anything. But he might have them all. I don't even know. He probably doesn't even have one for each team. Like, he probably didn't even keep all of them. Like, do I still really need to have St. Louis?
The Blues. I have played a few
It's
games,
like,
but-
I really didn't make my mark there. And that was the only team that he wore a different number.
Yeah.
He wore 81 because Robert Thomas has 18. You've got
So
the.
where do you take your collection from here?
Yeah, I'm sort of on the lookout for some of the rarer ones. I have been collecting a lot of the reverse retros, both the 1.0s and the 2.0s. So I'm looking out for some of the rarer 1.0s, but they are expensive. Like, I don't know if you've looked into any of them, like the Avs first one, the Nordiques throwback. It's like $500, $600. Like, they were so coveted and they were so limited. Like that first run was just brutal for that. If you didn't buy one at the time, which when those released, I had no intentions of having this huge collection, so I really only got Vegas, which I'm actually very fortunate that I was able to get that one because it's one of the rarer ones now. If you wanted to get one, like I see people posting all the time on the Vegas subreddit and on the hockey jersey subreddit, they're like, does anybody know where I could get the 1.0 reverse retro for Vegas? And it's like, yeah, I saw one on there for 300 or something. It went pretty quick, or I saw it here for whatever 400 or something like that. So it is tough. I would like to get an Avs one, but I think that's going to be very difficult. The Coyotes, their purple one was awesome, and maybe the Capitals one was really nice too. So we'll see. I'm constantly on the lookout for new stuff, and there's going to be new jerseys coming out next season too.
Are the Ducks reverse retro 1.0s going for a lot? 'Cause I know those, like, people were a big fan, like the Mighty Ducks were looking for those.
Yeah, those ones are also tough. I would like to get one of those. I almost bought one the other day actually, but it was a size up, and I was like, maybe I should hold out and find something that's in my size. Even though it seemed like it was a pretty good deal, I was like, you know what? I don't absolutely need it. It's something I could probably wait on. But that one I will look for.
Have you seen the new Ducks jerseys?
Yeah, the 30th anniversary jersey looks pretty. It looks pretty good. I know some people have had like a gripe with the logo. The logo's like, they don't like that it's not just a rehash of the of the original logo, but it's got a little bit of personality.
Very Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, and the colors are great, and it has I don't know if you saw, but it has like embossed like writing. It says like Mighty Ducks of Anaheim 1993, and then on the other one it has like Anaheim Ducks 2006 established or something like that, which is pretty cool. So it's got a bunch of little details. I'll probably end up picking that one up, and then I think the Bruins, they're gonna have new like temporary home and aways for the Centennial season, right? With the updated logo, which is it's kind of like a mix of this one and the Spoke B a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a refresh of like really old logo.
Yeah, which I think it looks really sharp. I don't know about you, but I think it looks good. I think it'll look good on a jersey, but we'll see. I guess they haven't. I don't think they've officially said that there's going to be a new jersey yet. But that seems like that's gotta happen, right? They're going through all this new branding, and they seem to be building it up quite a bit into something like that. And then Vegas is going to be playing in the Winter Classic, so that'll be a new Vegas jersey. So I'll have to get that. I haven't heard anything.
Normally the Winter Classic ones have those like details too, like either on like the crest or whatever, like something embroidered on the back.
Yeah, they usually have some like callback on the collar, on the back collar, or something like that. They usually go pretty hard on those, and they try to make them like more historical look, I guess. So it'll be interesting with the two newest franchises what they're gonna do. A lot of people are thinking of Metropolitan's throwback for Seattle, and then Vegas. Who knows? It might be like maybe a Thunder throwback, or might have something to do with just like what if Vegas had a team, so long ago, like imagining what that would sort of look like. So they got a lot of directions they could go.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might try to pull from some like old art or something, or photos from Vegas back in the day, and see if they can whip something together that looks smart. I think the Winter Classics, they don't usually take as many risks as they do for like the Stadium Series jerseys. It seems like those ones, they kind of really go out there to make them look really modern, and they seem to have a trend where they make everything bigger. I don't know if you remember like the LA Kings versus the Avs, those huge ones. Like the LA was gigantic.
Oh yeah.
So we'll see what the new Stadium Series ones look like.
Yeah, I'll probably need to get a new Bruins jersey soon too, because I mean, the last active player I have is Bergeron, and hopefully he plays another year. But I have my Bergeron jersey, which I'm wearing right now. I have my Krug jersey, which you actually found for me on like some dude selling it on Reddit.
Yeah.
Which that's one of my favorite jerseys, like the Winter Classic. Um, I love that style. And then I have my Tim Thomas jersey.
Oh yeah.
Both those, I did the same with my Bergeron jersey. It was my first one. I bought full price Reebok jersey on the NHL shop, like $180.
Yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
know any better. Um, and like that Winter Classic one was like 60 or whatever. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess he was also not on the team anymore, so that's
Yeah, that's yeah, you bought it after he got traded, yeah. Which is why it was so
yeah. But
cheap.
I
But
need to decide like what player I would get next.
yeah, like I assume you want to have an active roster player as it like
Yeah,
your
and I've
next
always
jersey, yeah.
wanted a DeBrusque, but that's like a scary pick because like I mean he requested a trade, he stayed on the team. Like I've always loved DeBrusque, but
Yeah.
it's just one of those that like you might get the jersey, then he gets traded like a week later. So like I'd want another kind of safe pick, like maybe a McAvoy or like I don't know. Marchand's getting older, but
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of people don't like the Marchand jerseys for whatever reason. I think his
who
reputation
knows
has
why?
changed a little bit, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's not gonna go away, especially for people who already have a distaste for Boston. I would say
Right.
McAvoy's probably a safe bet.
That's the
There's
safest pick for sure.
yeah, safest for sure. Like he's the future of that decor, and yeah, like you
I
said,
mean, depending what happens with Swayman this offseason, I mean, him and Trent Frederick are both supposedly going to arbitration.
yeah.
Um, but Swayman's the one that, like, if I was Swayman, like, I'd want to go to arbitration because you had like a 925 save percentage the last like 2 years. You played great. Like, you can probably get some money from that. I also just learned, I don't know if you knew this, but arbitration, if the arbiter comes back and it's less than 4 million, the team has to take it. Like they have to take the player.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that could kind of screw us if like they value Swayman at like 3.9, let's say. We'd have to have that on our books. We have like 5.5 million cap space right now. And then if Bergeron wants to come back, then we'd have 1.5, and then we have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, that's just the era really right now is the tight salary cap. I mean, we're
Flat
supposed to
cap.
be getting yeah, flat cap era. Yeah, we're supposed to be getting a little bit more relief next summer. We'll see, but yeah, it's tough right now. Especially yeah, you got to sign Frederick too. I mean, ideally you wouldn't. I don't think they'd want to let him walk as a UFA if they didn't
Yeah.
agree with the arbitration deal. If they go to arbitration, because they might still strike a deal beforehand, but then yeah, you got to worry about if Bergeron did want to come back, you got to have room for him. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about if Krejci would want to come back for one more year.
I think he's
Also,
done.
I
I'm
think he'd
like
probably be
pretty sure
done too.
Krejci's done. I'm probably leaning towards Bergeron's done. Maybe like a 40-60 split, but like I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen like all of like the Bruins beat writers, where like not all of them, but some of them are being like, "Come on, like Bergeron's like it's you can't just leave us hanging. Like it's time to like make up your mind and like all this stuff." Like some of them are even like not like roasting him, but like giving him a hard time. I'm like, Bergeron can take all the time he wants. Like
yeah.
he's done everything for the organization. Like,
Yeah, he's absolutely earned the right to take his time.
hmm
Think what's best for him, his family. If his body is able to do it. I mean, look at the deal he signed last off season just to come back. Like, you know, that's a super good deal, and obviously was the reason that they were so competitive in 2022, 2023, the regular season. I guess we could get into that a little bit. I know it's
I guess.
tough to talk about, but it was a magical regular season, the best one ever. Obviously, that's been talked about, at length. But they broke so many records. They had such a great year. They were so fun to watch. I mean, you turned on a game, you just assumed that they were gonna win. That's how good they were. But
Yeah.
but
I mean, any
it's
Bruins
tough.
fan that said like, "Yep, I know they're gonna be this good this year," was like, just flat out lying.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Do you know Jay Fresh, right?
Yeah.
Like he had his predictions last year, and he's like, he basically, for those who don't know, Jay Fresh and he works for the Athletic, and he basically has, I don't know, equations and algorithm. I don't know what you want to call it, but basically you put in team stats, like you put in their possession numbers, their advanced statistics like Corsi, Fenwick, all that stuff, and it basically spits out their projected points for the season. And Jay Fresh was saying, he's like, I keep running the numbers. It doesn't make sense why the Bruins are like above and beyond, like way ahead of everyone else in the Atlantic. And he's like, it doesn't make any sense to me, but this is what I get. And like, it just ended up happening. And I don't know. He just released it yesterday. I think he has the Bruins being first in the Atlantic again. I think tied with like 104 points.
Yeah, I saw that. I think I remember last year he was tweaking like the model a couple times, so he released a couple different iterations, but so we'll see if anything changes there. And he was saying that, part of the reason for like some of the decisions for this year's was there's different metrics that they sort of keep the same. Like they don't necessarily take into account how well rookies are gonna play because it's so different. Like I think that's why a lot of Sabres fans, they saw that they weren't gonna make the playoffs. They've got a huge opportunity this year to finally break the long drought, but they were saying Devin Levi's not really going to be a factor, and I think maybe didn't like some other players, but yeah, I guess we'll see. I know I had Boston out of the playoffs in my like preseason brackets for I think the last 2 years, so and then of course they had a super run last year, so yeah, you never really know. Could seem like they're on a downswing, but that's kind of just how Boston has been for the past decade or so. It's like
They always try to stay competitive, and I think this year I see them as like a bubble team. I mean, I guess obviously it depends with what Bergeron does, because if you don't have Bergeron coming back, Coyle's your number one center, which is less than ideal, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it really
you
does.
just look down the center depth, and it's kind of rough.
Yeah, it really does hinge on that. Which that's why like normally I make my preseason bracket in like August because I really want to make sure that all the free agent signings and things have been fledged out for the most part, because yeah, I really can't say for certain at this point. My thought, my like heart says that they probably will find a way to break through, but it's so tough when they still have to re-sign Swayman. They still have to. I mean, Frederick won't really make much of an impact as far as whether or not going to make the playoffs. Most likely, I don't want to take anything away from Trent Frederick. He's a great, offensive player there. But, Bergeron is going to be the big factor. It does sound like Krejci's probably not gonna be there, but we'll see. Who knows? That's the fun. Is like they got to play the games. There's so many seasons where you get so many expectations in the off season about certain teams, and then they actually play the games, and then boom, there's Florida wild card team, Boston gone, Toronto gone, Hurricanes gone, made it all the way to the Cup final.
Where do you see the Golden Knights being next year?
They are probably still going to be contending for first in the Pacific, I would think. It's mostly the same roster. Smith is gone. They did have to have him go in order to re-sign Barbashev, which probably was the right move. We'll see. We're gonna miss Smith having that chemistry, with the original Misfits there, but they still should be super competitive. They'll probably have a couple young guys, prospects, fighting for a spot in training camp. Maybe Brendan Brisson gets some looks. They just re-signed Pavel Dorofeyev, who looked good. He played, I think, 18 games last season and was pretty solid offensively. I don't know if anything will really change defense-wise, but we'll see. And then you got to think about what's going to happen with Leonard. Like, if he's good to go, are they going to have to move him somewhere in order to make the money work? Because if he can play, they can't put him on LTIR. You know, they need that cap relief in order to keep their roster. So that's going to be a huge question. I think he'll probably not be good to go. I don't even know if he'll be able to come back. He had double hip replacement surgery. I think it was replacement. So, you know, that's huge for a goalie, and there aren't, you know, many positive stories of goalies coming back from something like that. So, you know, as much as I loved seeing Robin Leonard, I don't think he plays another game for Vegas.
If you had to choose any year for the Golden Knights to have won the Cup from their inaugural season up until this past year, is this the year you would have wanted them to?
I mean, it definitely would have made the first year super magical, but like also I think that would have made the
You would
hate
become
like
hated by the entire
yeah,
league.
I think the hate would have been is way worse than it is now. I mean, it would have been fun for me, but you know, it's also like, you know, I don't. It doesn't give you as many expectations, I guess. Like you're like, okay, we won in the first year, like that's kind of it, you know. Like I'll still watch, obviously, but you kind of as a fan, especially of a new team or of a team that's never won, you know, the first one has got to be super memorable, and it would have been, but it's tough. I think before this year, I really liked the year 4 team, which was the 2020-2021 team that lost to Montreal. I thought at the time that was a super competitive, super fun roster. We had both Fleury and Leonard, which is a crazy tandem at the time. That would have been really fun. But I did love the roster starting the year in 2022-2023. I thought the depth was absolutely stellar. I was excited to have Eichel start like as his first full season as a Golden Knight. So that was good. And then you know, they kept finding a way to win in these tight games during the regular season, which it seemed like in previous years they would have lost some of those games that they found a way to win. So the regular season was sort of building up into something, you know, special. I was always sort of pessimistic about the team as far as like my expectations for them actually winning the cup, just because that's kind of like my track record for rooting for teams was like, I don't really expect to actually see my team win a championship. I also root for the Bills, so you know, there's a little bit of heartbreak there. I haven't been watching for that long though, so I didn't get to experience some of the pain that other Bills fans have felt. But yeah, I don't know. Once the trade deadline came around, they acquired Barbashev. I thought was a great pickup. They didn't cost that much. I was looking forward to see Zach Dean, especially with the last name there. So hopefully he does well in St. Louis. And then Bluger was a pretty good pickup. I thought Quick was sort of weird at first, but he ended up working out in the regular season. I did not want to see him play in the playoffs though, so I'm very thankful that Hill did not get injured, because yeah, that would not have been ideal, and we definitely would not have been able to overcome probably even Dallas, I would say, if Quick
And
was playing.
the whole thing with Aiden Hill, I mean, like, is he a rookie? It wasn't his first year, right? I mean, he's a young goaltender.
No, he's had a cup of coffee. He played in Arizona for I think a year, maybe a year or two, and then he got traded to San Jose, and then we traded for him in the off season just as some depth. You know, the expectation going into the season was going to be Thompson and Brossois as the starter and the backup. So Hill was going to sort of be probably the third in the organization, maybe competing for the backup spot, and Brossois playing in Henderson. But yeah, Hill was definitely not brought in as the starter. He did play, I want to say maybe around 20 games during the regular season, and he was good, but he was not nearly at the level that he brought himself to when the playoffs when he went into the playoffs, and he didn't
So
even
you
start in the
think
playoffs.
the Golden Knights winning the cup with a third string goalie changes the market and how like GMs look at goaltending in the future? Like I know Hellebuck is he still a free agent? Because
No, he's not a free agent. He's just
or he's looking for a
requested a
trade, right?
trade. Yeah.
Like does that change? Do teams even look at Hellebuck if he's asking for 6 or 7 or 8 million? Do teams look at the Golden Knights and see that they won with a third string and think they don't need an elite goaltender?
It's definitely an interesting question because yeah, you look at the last couple of teams like when the Avalanche won, I didn't think Darcy Kemper had like a super stellar performance in that year when they won in 2022. I mean, he was good, but a lot of it was the defense that was surrounding him was, super solid. You got a full top six there with, some of their bottom pairing D guys could be playing, top 4 minutes on a lot of other teams. So that helps. But I do think Hill's, like you could tell that Hill's performance was a lot a lot more solid. Like he was making a lot more of those desperation saves and a lot of those just like really solid positional saves that I don't think you saw with some of those other teams. Obviously, Vasilevsky, brought a lot with the Tampa Bay runs. So I don't know if GMs will necessarily think there's one sort of formula, but there is a lot of that overcorrecting after a team wins. Like they start trying to copycat. That's what they always say. It's like a copycat league. So I guess we'll see. I think there will be a lot more teams that try to carry three goaltenders, or at least have a pretty solid AHL goalie that hopefully they can pass through waivers. So we'll see if that happens. I think there had been a lot of really solid goalie prospects lately, so it should be good.
Yeah, and as far as like a copycat league goes, it would have been interesting if Florida had won because I mean, the offseason they had the big blockbuster trade getting Kachuk and trading Huberdeau, and I mean, like other teams have tried that too, but a lot of GMs are too scared to make those kind of moves. And I mean, it almost worked for Florida. Obviously, Kachuk had a huge role in that playoff run, so it'd been interesting to see what other teams might have tried and if GMs might have been willing to make those risky trades if the Panthers had won the cup.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that I remember when I saw that trade, I was like, oh wow, this is definitely one of the biggest trades I've ever witnessed as a fan. And you know, you look at, I guess, going back to Vegas a little bit. A lot of fans talked about how ruthless they were with some of their trades. They weren't really afraid to get rid of like a player that's been around for a while with the team just to improve. You look at they traded Pacioretty and Coughlin for nothing, just to get cap relief so they could sign some other guys. They wanted to bring Martinez back, and I think that was part of with the Eichel deal, trying to make enough room for him. So yeah, it definitely would have changed the trajectory. I think GMs will still try to do that a little bit more. Get a little bit more gutsy. You did see Winnipeg trade for Iafallo and Velarde, which I think was probably one of the biggest trades of this offseason so far, sending Dubois to LA. But yeah, you don't normally see a trade like that where you have so many of those solid roster players. Those are second line guys on a lot of teams. So that was a big one. We'll see if other teams follow suit, especially with Winnipeg. They've got other pieces that want out. You saw Wheeler sign in New York.
That was a crazy signing. You like league minimum.
I know. He might play on their top line too. I mean, I know he's
Like
older.
800K.
Yeah, I think he's what 37 or something like that. So we'll see how much he produces offensively. But if he's gonna be playing on a line with Kreider and Panarin, or maybe the second line, he's gonna be a contribute. He's gonna be a contributor. So that was a team friendly deal. Quick goes there too. They're going to be a team to look out for.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about Vegas and how they're like ruthless, the best metaphor I heard for that was basically their GM is basically trading how someone would do it in like the video games and like franchise mode
Yeah,
where you just like there's no emotion to it, right? You're just trading for the best deals, and I mean that's part of the reason they've been able to deal with their cap situation year after year is they don't get emotion involved and they don't sign these long-term overpriced contracts to players that are like the original players or anything like that. They just if you're not good enough anymore, they're just gonna cut you and bring in someone new.
yeah, and it is pretty interesting to look back a little bit and see like the sort of players that they ended up letting go that maybe at the time they were a bit of a head scratcher. Like okay, like you don't keep David Perron around. It seemed like he was like a super big part of their first year there and their run to the final. A couple other guys. I mean, I mentioned Pacioretty. He was, I believe, a 30 goal scorer the year before they traded him to Carolina for nothing. And then obviously the Fleury deal. They're not getting anything out of that. They're just strictly dumping him. They didn't even want to claim the player that they received. I don't remember his name, but like they pretty much just sent him down through the waivers, and I don't think he's even part of the organization. And same with getting rid of all their first rounders. They haven't traded too many of their actual first round picks, but then when they have the prospects that they've drafted, they don't keep them. You saw Zach Dean go for in the Barbashev deal. They traded Cody Glass, although they did acquire Nolan Patrick in that deal, who didn't end up, able to stay with the team really because of his concussion issues, which was unfortunate. But yeah, they've often opted to go with veteran players who they know are going to gel well, which I think is part of their pro scouting is like, pretty great that they were able to get Chandler Stevenson for fourth round pick, I believe. Which that one, I mean, that was an absolute steal. He's like our, 2C and a super solid producer, great chemistry with the team. So, yeah, you never really know how a trade's gonna go. Looking back, 5 years from now, it's like, was that really gonna be the right move? But they've found a way.
So that was another question I had for you. Going back to the Golden Knights' first year, you probably remember this better than I do, but you remember George McPhee had like a 5-year plan or something like that, where I forget if he just wanted to make the playoffs or something,
Oh
or if he
yeah,
had.
yeah. You're talking about so that actually it was Bill Foley who's the owner of
Oh,
the
okay.
franchise. So yeah, before the team had even drafted anybody, before they had any players, signed any free agents or anything like that, yeah, they expect. He said, "I'll say playoffs in 3, and then cup in 6." So it was pretty crazy that did end up coming true. Obviously, the playoffs didn't. They made the playoffs their first year, and they only missed the playoffs the year before winning the cup. So, which I don't know how
But it
many
actually
teams
was
have done
six
that.
years, right?
Yeah, six years
Crazy.
exactly. So that it does look pretty crazy now going back.
Rigged.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot, NHL. Way to go, refs. I'd like to
Yeah.
thank Commissioner Gary Bettman for gifting my team a Stanley Cup championship. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
and someone who hasn't really suffered as an NHL fan, I don't know if you can answer this question, but what would you give up for a Stanley Cup win? Like, if you won the cup this year, obviously. If you didn't make the playoffs for the next 10 years, like if you had just put yourself in this terrible cap situation, like would it be worth it? Or at what point is it not worth winning the cup?
It's tough. I mean, you always want to have your team win the first one. So I think if it was the first one, I could probably see myself being like, yeah, I would sacrifice maybe 5 or 7 years of mediocre or just straight up poor hockey if I can get just one cup win. Cause
7 years of being the Coyotes.
yeah, pretty much yeah. Like maybe you start getting competitive, after 5 or so years, but you're still not there. Maybe the fans start thinning out a bit at the games, but there's always a reason to watch. Like the regular season can still be super fun, but yeah, I do feel for fans of teams like Arizona, like Winnipeg or Columbus, teams that just they haven't had that success over the last 10 or so years. I mean, Winnipeg went to the conference finals that first year with Vegas, but other than that, like these teams just it's been tough. That there are some bright futures there with those franchises specifically, but it is tough, especially with those franchises that have never won before. I mean, those three haven't even made it to a Stanley Cup final, so I think even just to get there, a lot of fans of those franchises would probably sacrifice a lot. Like, yeah, I'll take a couple more years just to get me there. Let me root for them. Let me get them, the conference championship merch, something like that. I just want to see my guys finally show what they can do.
Yeah, and as far as sucky teams go, do you think a full tear it down, blow it up, rebuild is the right decision, or do you think the retool is the more effective method?
I'm, you know, it it's so tough because part of that is the timing of when you decide to do it, because you could be, maybe, let's say like St. Louis, for example. They just got out of the playoffs for the first time in a little while, and it looks like they're trying to do some sort of retool. And I think what they did is good, where they knew the position that they were going to be in at the trade deadline this last season, and so they got rid of O'Reilly, they got rid of Tarasenko, they got rid of Barbashev, and they acquired good assets for those guys. I think maybe Mikla also. I don't know if he was a trade deadline acquisition or not, but yeah. So they recognized the position they were in versus some other teams you might see like, okay, we're gonna try to tweak it a little bit. Maybe like the Penguins, for example. They've
I'm gonna say
been,
Washington. They're basically the same.
yeah, Washington or Pittsburgh over the last 5 or so seasons, where they've been competitive in the regular season. They haven't been super stellar. They make the playoffs. Neither of those teams make the playoffs last year, but they make the playoffs, and then it's another first round exit. Another tough loss in the first round. I think we're close. We're this close. We're gonna change a couple of things here, but we're basically gonna just have an older version of most of our core with a couple, key differences here and there. Maybe some third line guys are sprinkled in. Maybe a new goalie, like they brought in Kemper. They let Samsonov go, but in Washington's case, but it didn't end up, really amounting to anything. Obviously, they're still in that process now, but I think it's all about the timing of when you realize the trajectory of your team's going down. I think for some, a total teardown can be good, but it does take a while. I mean, look at Anaheim. They've been in hard rebuild mode for the last probably 4 years or so, and they're still not looking like they're close to getting back to the playoffs. So
Yeah, the biggest issue I see with the retool is you're basically trading your first round picks every year for like a trade deadline acquisition, and you do that year after year, and eventually you have all these like middle-aged players and no prospects in the pipeline, and it's just not, it doesn't last long. It's just, you can't, it's non-sustainable.
yeah,
But the other
and if you
team
don't
I would,
win, while you're doing that, like it totally, ruins the trajectory of the team. And that's, I think that's why some of the general managers do go for it, because, they know that they're hired to get fired. They got to make a lasting impact on the team, and they're trying to, win the championship as soon as they can. So they might not reap the benefits of a long rebuild if they're not going to be there by the time the team comes back around.
Also, I feel like if you're the one starting the rebuild, you say, "Hey, give me like 3 or 4 years. Like I'm starting this rebuild. We're not going to be competitive yet," and you also get leeway that way. I
Yeah.
mean, look at Detroit with like Iserman. I mean, the Iser plan, right? Year after year for the last 3 or 4 years, and they've still. It seems like they were kind of moving in the right direction. Then they take a step back, and they're just kind of back to where they were a few years ago. They're not still not competitive. They have young guys, and the young guys just aren't stepping up to that next level.
Yeah, a lot of people have been talking about Detroit this last offseason, and they have made a lot of moves this year. But the patience is definitely starting to grow thin, similar to Ottawa. They're in a similar situation where it's like, yeah, it's been a long drought. I think 7 years for Ottawa, maybe eight, or I think seven for Detroit, maybe six for Ottawa. Yeah, 2017, 2016, 2017, Ottawa went to the conference finals there. So um, it, it it was tough. It is tough to watch your team, not having the development that you want, and then if you think you're close, like maybe Ottawa and Detroit do, and you start acquiring more pieces, you start limiting your cap space, and then you still don't make it. Maybe some prospects aren't working out. It might take 3 or 4 more years to sort of retool the rebuild. Like the core that you've been building up still isn't coming to fruition. Which, I mean, I'm definitely rooting for Ottawa to come out of this one.
I'm not.
I don't expect them to make the playoffs this year. I don't know about you.
I still think they're at least another year out.
Yeah.
Maybe if Ryan Reynolds was part of the team, there would be a different story.
Yeah. Right. And I actually had them in the playoffs last offseason. I was one of the people who thought that they made enough strides that the young core was gonna go, and I wish
You were a Summer of Pierre fan.
I guess I was, and I wish that I had picked New Jersey instead because I really thought that New Jersey had a really good shot of shooting up and getting to the playoffs, but I did not pick them. I had a couple of those things where I should have went with my gut, but I overthought it a little bit. I thought St. Louis was gonna go out. I also thought Nashville was not gonna make it initially, and then I changed my tune. I also threw Pittsburgh in there because I'd been taking them out of the playoffs the past couple of seasons, and they kept squeaking in. And I was like, all right, if I say that they're not going to make it again this year, they will squeak in again. So I'm just going to finally bite the bullet, say, yeah, they're going to find a way. And of course, this year they didn't make it, which I was happy as a fan because I do not like Pittsburgh, but I was sad that
So
my
any
prediction was
Pittsburgh Penguin fans listening can blame Brad for you guys not making the playoffs.
yeah, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. I
And I
don't
guess
know what's going on there.
the other tricky thing for GMs this year, I know we mentioned the flat cap, but have you noticed how many players are taking like 1 year deals, and even with the 1 year deals, they're just not getting paid what they're worth just because teams don't have the money for it. But the thing that's interesting is there's the young guys also taking 7 or 8 year contracts now when they know the cap's going up, which I don't know. I guess it depends on your personality, right? If you just want the money now versus if you think you can be worth more in the future. I can't think of a good example. I'm sure you have plenty, but of young guys signing for 7 or 8 million for 8 years, and if they took a bridge deal and waited a year or two, they could be making a lot more, assuming they like continue playing how they have been.
Yeah, that definitely this off season especially you've seen a lot of guys taking 1 year, maybe 2 year deals, so that way they can get that huge pay raise, in a couple of years once the cap's gone up. Well, we'll see how that pays out. I do think a lot of those, especially if you're a younger player that just signed a 7 or 8 year extension, that might come to bite you. We might be looking back in a few seasons and being like, wow, the team really made out well. They've got this young guy locked up for a lot of years. One guy you might see something like that with is Keandre Miller, I believe, is an RFA right now, He's a solid young defenseman. I think his upside is there. Maybe not super productive offensively, but super defensively sound. He does seem to be in the right position offensively a lot. So we'll see if they do some sort of bridge deal with him. That would probably be my guess. I don't know if that one's going to arbitration or not. If he filed for arbitration, I can't remember. But that one will be a fascinating situation to see. We'll see if he ends up going for a long-term extension or if he bets on himself, which I think he should. I think he's got a lot of promise as one of the younger D-men on that pretty solid D-core.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Devils cap friendly right now, and I mean Jack Hughes, 22 years old, 8 million AAV till the 2029-2030 season.
Yeah.
And like when the cap goes up, that 8 million is gonna look like nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see as like we get into the later seasons of those contracts if there are going to be a lot more players signing for upwards of $10 million. Austin Matthews is going to sign a big contract, most likely an extension. I don't think he's leaving Toronto, but we'll see if he does something like that, where if he signs a 1 year or 2 year deal just so he can get that huge bump, but maybe try to stay competitive now with Toronto, or if he just says, you know what, I can get a huge 7 or 8 year deal now, and then later down the road it'll be super team friendly, more or less. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like this offseason's been really slow, right? Like there haven't been a lot. I feel like normally by this time in July there's been a lot of deals done. Like I forget, I saw an article the other day about the remaining free agents, and I mean Bergeron was number 4, but he's not really a free agent. He's only going to one team if he does.
Yeah.
Like once you get past even 5 or 6, it's like people have never heard of.
Yeah, yeah. They were saying that the free agent class this year was pretty sparse, and which I sort of thought it meant that we were going to see a lot more trades. And yeah, we haven't really seen that. I don't know if maybe like after the free agent frenzy, teams are sort of stuck in their ways a little bit, and they're trying to really make good use of their remaining cap space, especially the teams trying to stay competitive. We'll see. I feel like there are still some trades that should be coming down the pipeline. Maybe some minor deals, but there's still some big names that are on the trade block. Obviously, Erik Karlsson. We'll see what happens with that. It's certainly possible that he doesn't go. He sticks around with San Jose for one more year. Maybe gets moved at the trade deadline, but yeah.
I mean, last year was the time to trade him, right? Like at the deadline, one of his best seasons.
Yeah. I don't think he gets 101 points this year, so it's probably in San Jose's best interest to, if they're gonna move on from him, which I think they probably should, to move on from him now, while the season hasn't started yet, so the expectation is still 75, 80, 90 point player. He's got great value, and they're just trying to get a deal where they don't have to retain a whole bunch of salary. Maybe they're trying to do a third party brokership sort of deal. We've seen those in the past couple of years with the flat cap. I don't know what the sort of compensation would look like for that. I guess it would depend on how much that third team is retaining, but I don't see San Jose retaining more than 33% or maybe 30%. It looks like they're definitely trying to get most of his money off the books, especially with how much he's making. You can't afford 50% for 4 more years of what is it, 11.5 million.
So
that's
just about look it up. It's a lot.
5.5 or something like
11.5, and it goes till the 2026-27 season.
Yeah. So they don't. I think Mike Greer has been quoted as saying that he doesn't want to be paying that much for a player that's not going to be on their roster for for so long, which I think is probably smart, but he might not find himself a trade partner if he's that stingy. So
Yeah,
we'll,
you're
we'll,
gonna have
see,
to
we'll
retain
see.
something.
Yeah, there's I mean there just aren't enough teams that can take on that full contract, and the ones that do aren't in the market for him. I mean, Anaheim, like, is Anaheim gonna take it? Actually, I don't even know if they have a ton of cap space, but like Chicago isn't gonna take him. They're just not at that stage. There's other teams that have the space, but they're just not in a position where it makes sense to be giving up assets, and they don't even really have the assets necessarily to give up. Like, is San Jose going to be looking for roster players or specifically prospects? It all depends on how close they feel they are, which I think they're at the very least 2 seasons out from being competitive. I would think you got to see what their younger prospects are going to do. William Eklund's got to step up big. There's some other guys there that we haven't really seen enough from yet. Maybe Barabanov too.
Yeah, and even though Carlson's still a good player, I feel like even if San Jose traded him and didn't retain like anything, the other team would want more from San Jose. Like, if you could get Carlson for free, well, free, but you're still paying him 11.5. No one's gonna take that.
Yeah, right.
If San Jose returns 33%, I bet teams would still want something else from San Jose. Like, he's a good player, but with that money, it's it's still not even worth it with the flat cap. Like, if you're paying him, I guess maybe it would have to be 4 million, 5 million a year before, like, even if you get down to that number, it's probably just a trade for future considerations at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're probably going to have to, in order to make the money work, you're probably going to have to send one of your roster players the other way. So you're losing some depth there. Carlson's also 33 years of age, so um, you're going to have a tight window of him still being, as stellar as he is before those numbers start to drop off. I mean, there aren't too many players where, age 35 and up, they're still looking super solid. I mean, especially at defense, offensively, they're not going to be there. I mean, you got some forwards like Pavelski is still looking super solid. I think Jeff Carter was looking pretty good, although I think he had a bit of a down year this past season. But yeah, once you start getting up there, it's harder and harder to bet on these older players, and especially pay that much money and pay all those assets for them.
All right, I wanted to
So,
get into your hot takes at some point.
hot takes. Um,
Yeah, your hot takes for the upcoming season.
I don't know
You
if
have any good
it's
ones?
I don't know if it's much of a hot take, but I do think Buffalo is going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to break through. Looking at their roster on paper, I love their forward core. I think it's super solid, super deep. They've got a good mix of young guys, and they've got some veteran presence there. And then on D they got a great thing going. They've got super young top four. You got Owen Power. You got Rasmus Dahlin, who's locked up. You got Samuelson has been looking really solid. Um, and then they just picked up Eric Johnson, who I think is going to be actually a really good pickup. And then a lot of people are still questioning the goaltender tandem. I think if Levi plays a full season, which
Uka
he probably will.
Pekka
Yeah, UPL might be their third guy, probably in Rochester, but it'll most likely it'll be Levi and Eric Comrie, who's he looked decent last year. I thought he was good in Winnipeg as a backup. You didn't get to see much of him because of how much they start Hellebuck, but Comrie's decent. I don't think he's a starter in the league, but that might be some people's question mark as far as playoff success. But I do think it's a team that's deep enough and fast enough to qualify for the playoffs in 2023, 2024.
Who do you think they kick out to get into the playoffs?
You know, I've been thinking a lot about that. Um, it's gonna hedge a lot on Boston, but I also think Tampa Bay might finally start to hit that swing. I know that
I'm
might
not
be
ready
more
to
of
bet against them.
yeah, that might be more of a hot take than having Buffalo get in is having
Yeah,
Tampa Bay get
I'd say
out.
so.
Because I don't know. I mean, and it's not just because they finally got knocked out in the first round this year. I don't necessarily think that's the reason. They have lost some depth. They lost Killorn, but they did pick up some guys. They re-signed Tanner Jeannot. They picked up a couple other guys who look like they'll fit in pretty well. But I don't know. It's just the core keeps getting older, and you start thinking about all the mileage that these guys have put on, as far as these deep playoff runs, these long regular seasons. Is it going to be too much? I don't know. We'll see how John Cooper does. You know, managing the team this year. Breezewell always puts together a competitive roster, so I don't think it's like a lock that Tampa Bay is going to fall out, but with how competitive the Atlantic I think should be this season, it might just be one of those things where maybe a bad injury or something, or a weird skid at the beginning of the year just doesn't get the momentum rolling in their favor, and they find themselves on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I could see the Metro only having 3 teams and then the 2 wild cards being in the Atlantic this year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when you're looking at the Metro, uh, you're definitely thinking Carolina and New
New
Jersey are going to
Jersey.
be back. I think probably the Rangers would be a lock too.
Those are my 3, yeah. And then, sorry, Zane, but I don't know about the
Yeah,
Islanders.
the Islanders, it's so tough because they're basically bringing back the same group. They got a full year of Bo Horvat coming their way, but they haven't done anything to really inspire a lot of
You got all those
encouragement for the
7-year
team.
deals. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah,
They're like
they
the
got
one team to not
Pierre
just do
Engvall
1-year
locked up.
deals.
Yeah, Lou does not feel like signing another 1 year deal. He's like, you know what? I'm not gonna do this again next summer. We're just gonna take care of this now. I don't know how long I'm gonna even be here for.
Won't
So
be his problem, yeah.
yeah, it's tough because they're getting older. They don't have a ton of like super elite prospects that are coming their way, except for maybe Dufour. Looks like he's gonna be pretty solid. They traded R2 Ratu, so they don't have him anymore, who was looking pretty interesting. But I don't know, with how stubborn that team is in their structure. I don't know if they'll have enough. I would like to see them make it, but I think yeah that might have been it last year.
Yeah, so I guess if it is just 3 in the Metro, then, well, if you also think Ottawa makes it, then Atlantic would be, I'm still saying Boston. I might even, so Boston, Toronto, Florida probably is a safe bet.
Yeah, they've had a lot of change this offseason, but I think they will find a way back in.
And then you have Ottawa, and then it would be Buffalo instead of Tampa for your 5.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have Ottawa this year. I just don't see it. They're they're gonna have a brand new goaltender, Corpusalo. We'll see how that goes. I'm not super impressed with their decor. Their forwards I think are really solid. They're gonna be a fast, fun team, but are they gonna have enough to get over the hump with some of these other players, or excuse me, these other teams? I don't know. I would probably think, if anything, Pittsburgh might find their way back. If with some of the moves that they made this year, they I thought they were pretty good, and if they do end up getting Carlson, which is one of the rumors, that's going to be a huge bump for them. I'm not sold on everything with Pittsburgh. I still don't like their goalie tandem. I don't think Jari or DeSmith are gonna get you anywhere in the playoffs at least, but they might be able to get you in.
You think having Kyle Dubas changes anything?
Yeah, he does seem to be. He's been fairly aggressive so far. and it is a little odd that because he was hired as the president of hockey operations, not as the general manager, but he's the acting GM right now. I wonder if he's going to hire somebody this summer, or if he's just going to be taking on the role for the season, or maybe until the regular season starts, and then maybe he starts taking a seat back, like closer to the trade deadline or something like that. I haven't heard any rumblings about them looking into hiring a GM, so I don't know. I guess we'll have to just keep following along with that, but I don't know. He definitely made a lot of smart moves. It seemed in Toronto, and the team on the ice just let him down. I do think he's playing a smart game, but we'll see how his first season goes.
And speaking of Toronto, one of my hot takes was that they finally win a game in round two, which is not the hottest take, but I thought it'd be funny to have that. So that's
Yeah,
one of mine.
that
I still I don't know if they make it to the third round, but I think there's progress. Maybe it's just one extra win, but I think they're still gonna improve.
well they did go to Game 5 against Florida this year, didn't they? It was
Well,
the gentleman's sweep. So you're saying 2 wins?
oh, did they win one?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I guess they did
they
win
forced
one.
a Game 5
Oh, I do remember that.
back in
Yeah.
Toronto, and then they got pretty well walloped. Well, they lost
Yeah.
in
In my head, they
overtime,
got
but
swept.
yeah, it was the gentleman's sweep. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's like
and they were down 3-0 too. So it's like the odds are pretty astronomical. 4 teams have ever done it, um, out of what was it, like 92 times or something like that. So yeah, it didn't feel like the script was gonna go their way.
like what Rod Brendamore said. They didn't get swept by Florida. They just lost 4 games in a row, but they didn't get. It wasn't really a sweep, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah. So I guess yeah, sure. Win 2 games in the second round then.
There you go. Uh, I don't. They could. We'll see what their final
And, yeah,
roster
it
looks
depends on
like.
the off season for sure with Matthews and
Yeah, I mean he'll still at least be there for this year because he's a UFA next summer. So for him and Nylander, but so their extensions won't kick in until
yeah,
the
but it still
following off
changes
season.
things if you don't get signed this summer. Like it's still definitely on your mind, even though players say it's not. Like they want to just get the contract out of the way. That's like they hate that part of this whole thing, right? They just
Yeah,
want to play hockey.
that's true, and they still got to sign Samsonov. It looks like they're going to be going to arbitration. Actually, I think they are in arbitration. They just announced where the numbers were at for the team and the player, and they were not close, which is usually how it goes, and then they find a way. But that's gonna eat up a huge chunk of change, and you don't even really know how well Samsonov is gonna do this year. I think he was decent, but is he like the goalie of the future for Toronto? That remains to be seen in my eyes.
I mean, in the way I see goalies is I think it's more the defense structure than the goalie. I mean, again, look at Colorado when they had like Darcy Kemper. Yeah, where they make the goalie look so good, and then he goes to a different team, and he doesn't look the same. It's just limiting the high danger shots. And I mean, I guess it's the same thing with Olmark, right? And Swayman. They both played incredible, and I guess you don't really know unless they go to a different team how much of that is the goalie's play versus the defense. But I think defense is what comes first, and then you can have a mediocre goalie. But having an elite goalie with a crappy defense doesn't solve your problems.
No, yeah, and they've made a couple of changes there. I know Justin Hall is finally gone, which I know a lot of Leafs fans are. Well, it's kind of 50-50. Some fans are like praising Hall. They really don't think that he's like the defensive liability that others do, and then yeah, the other side is just like so happy to have him gone. Um, I don't know if they made any other moves defensively. I know Luke Shen did not come back. Ryan O'Reilly left, so they're gonna have to have some of their younger guys step up. Matthew Nyes will probably have a full season. I think they've got some other uh, prospects at forward that will probably get cups of coffee or will see themselves on a full roster spot.
You got any other hot takes?
Um, I I would like to say that we'll see another surprise run from a team or a team jump up from a really low spot in the standings. Like I do think it's not out of the realm of possibility to have Columbus come back up, make a huge jump. They haven't really shown that they're in rebuild mode with like the amount of money that they have on their roster. They're not really in a position to tear it down, especially since they just signed Johnny Gaudreau. Like they've got Line A there too, so they're not really in a spot to rebuild. We'll see if Fantilli actually is on the roster come training camp, or if he's gonna um, only play 9 games or whatever for his first year. I think it would be wise for them to play him, or at least start and see how he gels with the team, and then go from there. Like if he's really producing, you just keep him and you see how it goes. But if maybe he has a slower start to the year, you might think about waiting. But I could see a scenario where they get close to the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be there unless Merzlikins really comes back to form. He's had 2 or 3 pretty down years as far as performances go. And then I don't know, maybe you have Tarasov as the backup there, which he didn't look too great in the limited games that he was playing last year. So that might be a team to look out for as a dark horse to at least be playing competitive games in February and March. But I think it would be a little bit too hot of a take for me to say that they're going to be in.
Yeah, I guess I could see him making a push, especially with like the coaching change.
Yeah, true. We'll see how Babcock does.
Yeah, I have 2 other hot takes, and they are both pretty hot.
Oh,
So I'm just gonna
okay.
get them on the record while I have the chance.
Good idea.
Um, the first one is that McDavid does not lead the league in either goals or points.
Okay.
So I know goals he had 3 more than Pasta. He had 64 this year.
64.
That's not that hot of a take. Anyone else could be the goal leader. I mean, if Matthews stays healthy, he's a pretty good bet.
Yeah.
Points, McDavid just blew everyone else out of the water. So that's where the hot take is, I think.
Yeah. Who was the second player? Was it Draisaitl that had
I
the
think it was
second most
Johnny
points?
Simon.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Hopefully they figure something out. I mean, obviously I don't want them to win, because then that means Vegas won't win. But if
It's a
Vegas gets
waste of
knocked out by
talent.
somebody else, so be it. I would like to see the Oilers go. Do you have anybody in mind for who you think might usurp McDavid for either points or for goals, or just
No, I could
just
see
kind of
it being
feeling?
like a young person, maybe I mean Jason Robertson. Already kind of had like a breakout year, but
Yeah.
maybe go find another level kind of thing. Or even
Yeah.
like a Pasternak or someone like any of the superstars that have been close. Like all they need is just one big year. A team to have a season similar to the Boston Bruins, not a historic season, obviously, but like something where
Yeah.
they just everything clicks and you just have that one player that's just lighting it up, but not really anyone specific in mind.
Yeah, I could see like a Tage Thompson, or yeah, like you said, a Jason Robertson, or maybe probably not Elias Pettersson. He has been putting up some great numbers on a terrible Vancouver team, but yeah, somebody of that caliber where just the puck luck's there, the team's on a rise, and they just find a way. And yeah, I think if I would have to say somebody for goals, it might be Robertson. That Dallas does seem like they're on the uptick. They just locked up Duchesne for that 1 year contract, so we'll see how he gels. And then that Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski line has just been one of the most effective lines over the past couple of years. So I could see either points or goals for somebody on that line, probably Robertson if I had to take a guess.
I mean, the other part of the take is like McDavid had such an incredible year, and I mean, he stepped up from the year before, and I mean, he's obviously always been incredible. It's like, can he do that again? Like maybe he just takes a step back for a year, just like a slight step back, you know?
Could. I mean, yeah, you know, Austin Matthews scored 60 goals the previous season, and then he scored only 40 this year, and people are like, oh, you know, look at that Matthews. He's so overrated. He's not so good. It's like, okay, 40 goals. I don't think you understand how few players score 40 goals
And with
and the
how
points
few
he
games he
gets.
played, like he missed a good chunk.
Yeah, yeah. So I do think there's some overreacting there, but yeah, I could definitely see Matthews coming back, or maybe even Draisaitl. You know, just he plays a little bit less pass first this season on the power play, and just lights the lamp. That could definitely happen. Which, I mean, it wouldn't really surprise too many people. I think if the player who's been second most in points for the last couple of years just switches it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
yep, it's still Edmonton. They still absolutely dominate in the regular season. They've been first in goals for the last couple of seasons, and their power play was like 32% in the
Yeah,
in the
absurd.
regular season last year, and then the playoffs it was incredible also, but that they didn't have the 5-on-5 scoring to match Vegas. It was pretty remarkable to see those numbers. I think it was the best power play ever, right?
It was up there for sure. I don't know if it was the best ever. I mean, I guess it could be. I mean, back in the day, there were some pretty crazy stats,
Yeah,
but definitely, yeah, definitely up there for sure.
the goalies were a bit worse
Hmm.
in some areas. I mean, not all of them. There are still some great goalies, but you know
Yeah.
I think
I
the average goaltending nowadays, at least the techniques, and you got a lot taller goalies now. I mean, I don't know if there are many goalies under 6 feet playing in the league right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I've only been watching hockey for like a little over a decade, but even in that time, how much it's changed, like how much faster it's gone, how much less it's dependent on physicality. I mean, there's obviously the big bad Bruins and all the memes now about how the Flyers are kind of like still like trying to be that same kind of team. But even just like I don't know, some rule changes where there used to not be hybrid icing and players like collide full speed into the boards behind the net and all this stuff and just like it's crazy to me how much has changed. I don't know if you felt the same way, and I mean it's only been 6 years for you. They've added like the offside challenge and stuff, which I hate, but like other than
Yeah,
that, I don't know what's changed in that time frame.
yeah. I know the one big change that I can think of is that you can't change your lines on an icing if it's your team that got the icing call, which I think was pretty big. That changes
I
some
thought that was
things.
always a thing. You couldn't line change.
I
They
thought
made it so you couldn't call a timeout or something. Or
I thought that maybe that was a recent. I thought that was a recent change, but maybe yeah, maybe it's just a timeout. I don't
no,
know. I
I
thought
remember they did something with icing. I can't
yeah,
remember, but I could have sworn it was like always that you couldn't line change.
I thought that was a more recent thing, but
I don't know.
maybe I'm
I guess
mistaken.
I'll have to look into that after
Yeah,
this.
viewers, you can let us know in the comments.
I gotta give you my final hot take though.
Oh, absolutely.
The final hot take is probably the spiciest.
Oh, good. Save the best. Save the best for last.
Yeah. So I don't think Ovechkin passes Gretzky this year, but I think he has a 50 goal season
50 goals.
For Ovi.
You know, with the way that they were feeding him empty netters last year to try to get him to pass Gordy. I could definitely see that if he plays the full year, he's still got some puck luck, and he's got a lot of drive to win, because it's tough when your team's on a downswing. Obviously, they missed the playoffs last year. Who knows how competitive they're gonna feel that they are going into the beginning of the season. So if they start having like a down start. Maybe October doesn't go their way, or and then they split November, maybe like 50-50, something like that. He might not feel like he's going to be able to perform that well, but if they have a stronger season, I could definitely see 50 goals. It's not absolutely ludicrous, but it will be tough at he's what, 37 or 38?
Yeah,
Like,
around there.
yeah, but the one thing that he's got going for him is that he's not a sniper in the sense that he or a dangler, I guess. He does just love the power play, and he can absolutely, rip it. So I don't
His
think
shot's still great. I
he
mean,
needs the
yeah,
speed.
he was never a speed guy.
Yeah,
His shot was his thing, and he still has that. He stands in one spot and shoots, and people can't save it. And the Capitals franchise is just dedicating all their resources to just getting him this achievement, right? Like, they're not
yeah,
going to rebuild until he retires. They're just going to keep putting their money into getting him help, I think.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean that was, I'm sure, a big drive for fans to go to see Caps games last year, was to see him chase Gordy and then eventually top him. Like, yeah, just keep feeding Novi every time. Put that ticker up on the board. They had the display or whatever. They were flipping the number every time he scored, and they got the big puck statue with the 802 for when he tied it, or 803 when he passed him, something like that. So yeah, it will be a fun storyline to follow. I do agree that he won't pass Gretzky. I think he needs like 80 goals or 70 something in order to pass him this season. So that probably won't happen. I'll actually say
I think it's
definitely not.
yeah, around there, high 70s or low 80s.
Yeah, but
So that would be the hottest take.
yeah, 50 would go a long way to him passing the record though, because then the pressure is a little bit off.
Yeah, if he gets 50 this year, he for sure has it.
Yeah,
Unless there's like some
Follow.
major injury or something, but
Maybe he'll hit 900. That'd be pretty cool.
yep. Do you have any plugs? Do you have a podcast Twitter or anything yet?
I was thinking about that. I did not end up making an account. Maybe I will if people actually end up tuning in more frequently, but
Fair enough.
not yet. I will look into that though. So that's it. I guess you could follow me on Twitter. It's Brendan O'Connell with ones instead of L's. Sure, go for it. And you feel free if you have anything you want to plug. I guess as our first guest, the mic is yours.
I've got nothing exciting. I'm not big on the whole social media. Just go follow Brendan. That's all I got.
All right, that's it. That's
Go
been,
Bees.
Yeah, go Bees. I will be looking forward to them. They are my second team, sort of. I did not mention that. I don't know why, but yeah, they are. I do push for the Bruins quite hard. I've got 5, I think, Bruins jersey, something like that. So
More than me.
yeah, that's true. Well, we'll have to get you a new one next year. There should be some good options you could get.
Not until Bergeron retires. I don't get one.
Oh yeah, I gotta get a Bergeron. I'm
Maybe.
sure I'll find. Actually, you know what? I should wait until he retires.
Mm-hmm.
I'll definitely do that. I'll probably get a couple of them. Well, thanks so much, Dean. Appreciate you being on, and hope you tune in next week. We'll see who I have.
Thanks again for having me. Can't wait to find out who the next guest is.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be somebody you know.
Oh, no way.
All right. Thanks very much. Get your own life, okay? I know all your milestones are done.